everyone. Welcome to the Self Agency Advocate podcast. I'm your host, Amanda, and this is a space where we explore, discover, and share tools, techniques, and wisdom to help you build and maintain a sense of agency. All right. Welcome, everyone. I'm really excited for today's guest because it kind of serendipitously happened where she had the courage and the vulnerability to reach out. And that is one thing that I really admire in people when they see something that resonates and they say, yep, I want to be a part of that. And then they take that initiative and make it happen. So here we are. And I think I'm going to learn as much as everyone listening today. And that's also just as exciting. So Sarah, thank you so much for being here. We've got Sarah Menlove Health Coaching on the line and ready to dive in. So what we'll start with, Sarah, is just more so, who are you? What is it that you do? I'm so intrigued about this intuitive eating side of things and this embodiment that you speak to. So I would love to know a little bit more about who you are, how you found yourself here, and then we'll just keep diving into it.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having me. Firstly, it really is an honor to be here and share this with you and your listeners. So as you've said, my name's Sarah Menlove and I run my business, Sarah Menlove Health Coaching. But the main focus and work that I do in the world is body image and intuitive eating coaching, meaning I help predominantly women at this stage find freedom in their bodies, freedom with food, and ultimately freedom in their lives. And it's been a real journey that's got me to this place. It certainly hasn't always been the way that I've interacted with my own body or with food in the past. I come from a personal training background, worked in gyms for a number of years, competed in triathlon at age group level for New Zealand, and found myself in a really, I suppose when I look back on it, destructive place around my relationship with food and my body, where I was highly restrictive with food, cut out food groups, went on this quest to lose weight and perfect my body and through the gym scene, and then took that into triathlon, which, as any of you know who have done half Ironman triathlon racing, is a very endurance focused sport that takes a lot of time. And I put so much pressure on myself to be lean and be fit and be a certain body fat percentage within the sport that I lost my period for 4 years. I sustained a stress fracture, as unfortunately many female athletes do, fell into the female athlete triad, and ended up, my body really breaking down, realizing from that point that what I'd been doing and the way I'd been treating myself and treating my body and interacting in the fitness world was actually not healthy at all, even though everyone that I talked to and the way people interacted with me was like, oh, you look so fit, you look so healthy, what are you doing? Getting all of this positive encouragement, when both internally and externally my mindset and my emotional and social well-being and my physical health, none of them were actually healthy. And that's what brought me to do the work that I'm doing in the world now, and to share this message of holistic health, and also helping women to break free from this trap of focusing entirely on their physical external appearance in terms of weight loss and size as being the measure of their worth.
Oh my goodness. I resonate with so much of what you just said, because, and not even in the fact of having to be a high level athlete, but I just think that there's so much in what you said that so many people have experienced to some degree. There's so much in that, because when I think back to my own experience that got me into nutrition and into yoga and into that side of things, I guess, was that relationship that I had with my body. And it was so similar in that I was always trying to perfect and change and manipulate my body to be what I thought it should be. And hearing you say all of this, I'm like, oh, this conversation is going to be so good. Oh, yes. So, can you share the moment that you knew, okay, something isn't right? I can't keep going the way that I'm going, and I'm going to make this shift. Was it one moment or was it a buildup of moments? What did that look like for you?
Well, I guess there was a lot of moments when I didn't want to admit that something wasn't right because you don't
Mm,
go 4 years without a period, not knowing that that's happening. So there was
mhm.
a lot of denial. I suppose the forced moment was really like when we talk about the universe giving you a smack in the face to
Yep.
make you listen when it's been trying to speak to you through your body and
Mhm.
through different ways for so long was yeah, it was really when I was training for a 70.3 half Ironman on the Sunshine Coast, and I was in the midst of training for that and got what I thought was a niggle in my hip, which turned out, which took a couple of months actually to diagnose that it was a stress fracture,
Wow.
the kind of thing that no athlete wants to hear. And so I walked into the sports doctor's office that day and came out being told that I really needed to seriously consider the way I was training. Firstly, like I was not going to be going to that World Championships event. And secondly, I might never compete at that level again, which did, has turned out to be the case. At that time, I was kind of like, I still wanted to get back to that. So there was still this
Wow.
like, okay, I'm going to take this time off because I have to, because I'm
Mhm.
being told like for my body, for my health, this is important. And I understood that. And for the first time, I committed to that like I never had before. And so that meant actually stopping training and luckily for me I think I did have that physical response in my body where I physically couldn't do the things that I used to do, like I
Mm,
couldn't actually run because I was in so much pain. I mean, I couldn't really cycle. I did do a little bit of swimming I think at the time,
right.
um, but then it was like, no, I'm actually going to stay away from the sport until I get my period back, which it would have been so easy to say, oh, my stress fracture is healed, my body is healthy now, which
Mhm.
is just not true. So getting my period back, that was another decision. It was like I'm actually going to stay away from training. My coach said to me, don't come back until you've got your period back, which
Mm,
was a blessing really, and it took a really long time. It took me 18 months to
wow.
get my first cycle, and I think that was also a blessing because if I'd got my period back in the first couple of months, yeah, I would have gone straight back into training the way I was.
Yeah.
And it took that time, and it actually took a lot longer than that for me to really work on my mindset. So from there, I'd started doing yoga in my recovery, and I'd started to study health coaching and work on my mindset. And I just found all of these other parts of myself that felt a lot more important for me to focus on, which meant that, yeah, I didn't get back into training and I've really been continuing to work on mindset and this, um, the kind of more spiritual part of myself ever since.
Wow. Wow. Yeah. That's a big decision to make, and it is really difficult because a lot of people that I know and have talked to, they're like, "Well, my period will come back when it's ready and I'm just going to keep training." So for you to have that awareness and be like, "No, something is wrong just beyond my skeleton and my anatomy in that regard, but something's going on a deeper level." That's really really powerful. So I'm curious to know what your mental health was like when you kind of like lost this dream, really, because you had this passion and this drive and this focus to compete at the level that you were competing and then beyond. And then to get the kind of diagnosis saying, actually, that's not a thing, you need to stop everything. What, if anything, happened to your mental health during that time? Because I can only imagine, like, when I think to myself, when I've gotten injuries in the past, my mental health has taken a big hit because I'm taken out of everything that's normal for me and taking it out of
Mm.
routine. And it has a big impact. So, did you notice anything like that?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for asking that. Yeah, it was not good. I guess we could just say like it was like I suppose just even it feels like so long ago to me now, and that's why I also love having these conversations, because it just reminds me of the experience and what I kind of went through on that journey, which was like initially the devastation of not being able to compete in that one
Mm,
event, which in itself was like heartbreaking, right? Where I was like, I'd, left
yeah.
a job, I'd in my terms at the time, like sacrificed so much in
Hmm.
order to get to the place that I was in, the fitness that I was in. When I think about like food, and like I'd worked so hard for my body to look the way that it looked.
Hmm.
And so beyond even I'm not going to compete at that event, it was for me like really, oh my God, my body's going to change. Like,
Mm.
and this absolute fear around my body changing, and who am I without this, being the athlete, being the fittest, being the leanest, being the
Yes.
person that people kind of like, almost, I suppose, on some level, some sort of um, yeah, a lot of validation there, but like admiration,
Mm.
and
Yeah.
really tying my identity. And I think like what really resonates with me around self agency was, at that time my identity was so attached to that level of training and fitness, but also the way my body looked when I was doing that. So my mental health
Mm.
suffered because of that attachment to the identity and the exercising a certain way, eating a certain way, looking a certain way,
Yeah.
which caused me to, yeah, for a period of time, be in a really dark place, because one, like all of this time that I'd been spending on that, I had all of this time available now, and I like thought about this during COVID. I was like, wow, this is like almost for a lot of people, like they're going through this experience of having all of a
Mm.
sudden all of the things that have made them in their mind like who they are, not being able to do those, and you're left with
Yeah.
like, well, what value do I have? Like, what do I do with myself? Um, it,
Absolutely.
yeah, not only like career wise, like I hadn't put my focus on anything for so long other than training, that there was relationships that I kind of had let fall away because I'd been so strict and, you know, not allowing myself to go out socially and things like that.
Mm.
Um, so there was a lot of, yeah, what I suppose people call soul searching, which it really, and now I relate to that term in a different way, because it was like, well, I need to go inside myself and figure out who I am without this. And that wasn't something that I consciously automatically thought. Like, I went to the sports doctor's office and then I was like, oh, I need to figure out who I am. That's what I need to do.
Yeah.
It was like, it wasn't like that at all, right? It was like a good 6 to 8 months of wallowing and self pity and like, oh, what
Mm.
am I going to do? I don't have a job. Got a job back in a gym, like probably one of the most challenging places to work when you're gaining weight and you can't train and you're helping other people to work on their health and fitness. Um,
Right.
but
Yeah.
started working in a gym and just started doing things to like keep myself busy, I suppose. But then slowly the pieces of the puzzle started to come together as they do. I started going to a yoga class. Um, I came across coaching through a Google search and really had quite little self-awareness, I would say, at that time, and
Mhm.
just thought, I'm going to study health coaching because I'm still passionate about nutrition and I want to help my clients I'm working with in the gym on really achieving their goals. And I was really still in this weight centric paradigm, like if I can
Right.
help them with their mindset around nutrition, then I can actually really help them lose weight. And even though I'd been through this whole experience myself, I didn't at that time put it together that it actually isn't about it isn't about the weight loss. But that's
Mm.
how I started to come out of that uh, darker time in my life to find purpose and allow
Yeah.
myself to go and continue to follow that path. Like I just continued to follow the nudges
Yeah.
to, yeah, start to do
Yeah.
my own healing.
Mm. I'm struck by the similarity and hearing this across so many different people that share this type of story, this idea of not knowing how to basically grieve our past
Mm,
selves, you know? Like it is really a process of we get so attached, like you said, attached to the career and the identity of what these things make us. And then when something changes, when something's stripped away or an injury strikes or illness or we lose someone, there's a grieving process that I don't necessarily know that we really acknowledge. And I
mm,
know for myself, I didn't acknowledge it for the longest time when I went through all of these different things and kind of went through these chapters and phases. I would go through these really dark periods after and kind of do that soul searching and look in this direction and look in that direction. But when I actually got down to it, I was like, oh, I'm grieving my past self. Like I'm
yeah.
grieving the girl that I was or the woman that I was or
Mm,
the person that I was in that chapter. So I hear a lot of that in what you're saying, and I think it's so poignant to point that out and speak to it and give voice to the fact that we don't have to grieve external things. It's not grieving the loss of a loved one or a career. Like we can grieve ourselves in a lot of ways,
mm,
and it's
yeah.
really beautiful to hear you say that because it's I think it's so powerful when you can see it as a grieving process and then you can kind of find some sanity in that and say, okay, I'm not crazy. I'm not
Mm,
broken. I'm not losing it. I'm surrendering to this process and shifting and changing to something different and unknown and potentially so much better that I wouldn't have known before. So I
yeah.
think it's really
Oh my gosh.
beautiful.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. That, like, funny, I just got off a call with a client before we started this podcast, and this was absolutely coming up for her, and we'd kind of got to the end of the session before this sort of piece came, and I said, I know exactly what we're doing next week. Like, for now, know
Mm,
that it's okay to feel what you're feeling, and I'm in like the stages of grief. And that was one of, I haven't mentioned, but I did start working with my own body image coach about 6 months into doing my studies in coaching.
mm,
And that was one of the most powerful, when people say, like, what was it that really helped you move from this body dissatisfaction, like where I was when I was healing, when I'd stopped training and my body changed? How did you, sort of stop, you know, loathing your body and wanting to be back where you were? And it was
mhm.
an exercise that we went through together on grieving and actually allowing myself to grieve and to feel and to acknowledge that that was all
Yes.
okay, and have compassion for the pain that I was experiencing and letting go of that version of myself that I had previously held on to so tightly. Um,
Mhm.
so yeah, thank you for bringing that forward. I think that in any area of life where there is change, to we just resist so much, right? Like the resistance, yeah, rather than the acceptance and the acknowledgement of the feelings that are there, and then an opening to what might be next and what's possible from that place.
Yeah, because that's a big thing is like when you say that stepping into what's next and that different aspect. Like when we think about the nervous system, when we think about the brain can literally not make up anything that it's never experienced before. And this is why stepping into uncertainty or unknown is so terrifying and so uncomfortable because the brain's like, I have no idea what that could be. I don't know the threats. I don't know how to keep you safe if we step into that unknown. So we get so comfortable and we want to hang on to the past and the known and what we can control and what's stable and feels again controllable, and the
Mm-hmm.
brain is like, okay, yeah, here we're okay. And it's that grief because we don't know what's to come, we don't know what's possible on the other side of it. But when we can step into it and we can say, okay, brain, I know that we don't know, but we're going to take it one step at a time and we're going to do this and we've got this and change is okay. That's when we can kind of start to move through those spaces. Really,
Yeah,
really cool. So
can
I'm curious
yeah.
to know, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say control being like the operative word when we think about body image and restrictive eating and eating disorder recovery and things, right? Is like just the element of control that comes with that and the fear of the unknown of the changes. So yeah, all really
Exactly.
related. Yeah.
Control is huge. So I'm curious to know what it looked like for you to then start to build this new foundation. So, what did it look like for you to kind of make that shift and say, okay, like things are going to be different going forward. And now I need to get to know myself. I need to know who I am without external validation or sport or this career or this next competition. I need to soul search and I need to get into me. What did it look like for you to kind of step into that new or different realm of self agency and self discovery?
Mm, I think it's still evolving
Mm-hmm.
and will continue to at the time. And so the sort of process, I suppose, if you'll say that I went through was working with my own coach consistently for about 10 months, just doing a lot of shedding, like I
Yeah.
don't, like the letting go aspect really has to come first before you can completely open up to what's underneath. So it wasn't piling a lot of things on top, but it was peeling back these layers and understanding, even having the awareness that those layers were there around,
Mm.
like all the places that the identity gets hooked into, not only um, fitness, but then also an awareness of like where that came from and what I was really seeking from that. So,
Mhm.
just in my experience, like I grew up in a family that was, healthy, but it wasn't really rigid or anything like that. But there was this kind of expectation around doing things and like being
Yeah.
active. And I was a really good swimmer from a young age, so I had this thing that allowed me to be celebrated, whether that was
Mhm.
as a child at primary school where I felt a bit like maybe different sometimes.
Mhm.
And like I had, some friends that maybe I felt like I had to try and keep up with to be cool and to fit into the group. But I always had swimming, and that was always something that people would know me by.
Mhm.
So there
Yep.
was this love, this acceptance, this belonging, the core uh, foundations as humans that we desire that came through
Yeah.
exercise and then through, my body looking the way that it did through sport. So there was a lot of just awareness, letting go, grieving. And then as it has continued to evolve more recently, I also traveled. I went overseas for 9 months.
Mm.
And as I was running my business and working with clients online, I made my way from, uh, Southern California to Costa Rica, kind of traveling
Mm.
through
Wow.
Central America and being open to new experiences. So I think with the peeling back the layers and the letting go, there was like this sense of freedom that was activated within me that was like, well, what do I want to do? If I'm not constrained by this, like you have to train 20 hours a week and you have to eat a certain way, what's possible for me now? And one
Mm.
of the biggest things for me was travel and travel with freedom, travel with I cancelled my flight home 3 months in and stayed away for 9 and ate what I wanted to eat and enjoyed different cultures and found in that when, and you don't need to go to the other side of the world to find this, but it is helpful when you're just like, no one knows me, no one knows my past, no one knows this, previous version of me. I can be just exactly who I am as I am in this moment.
Yes. Yeah.
And so there was a real freedom that I found at the stage that I was in my own healing journey in doing that and in just being open to experiences, going to cacao ceremonies, going to a meditation retreat for a month in Guatemala, doing metaphysics study and meditation workshops, and
Mm.
um, yeah, just whatever kind of drew me, allowing myself to follow that. Like, really, I'd come from this place of so much structure and so much rigidity that this was a really new concept, I suppose, of intuitive living almost. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I saw a
Yeah.
sign for a workshop when I was in a small beach town in Mexico, and I allowed myself to go there and participate in that and learn something about myself. And then I met someone in a hostel who was going on a train through the Copper Canyon in Mexico, and I was like, yeah, I want to come. And
Mm-hmm.
yeah, so that was like another, yeah, what do I enjoy? What do I want to do? Who is this me that's kind of been locked away for so long? And
Right.
now, yeah, now it's like, how do I bring that way of being into day-to-day life? And I've been back in New Zealand now for just over a year, and and it's still going to those things. Like, it's still like going to a mantra chanting session, or going to a cacao ceremony, or a static dance,
Mm-hmm.
or a different type of dance that may be a little more uncomfortable for me now, finding those edges that allow me to stretch and grow and find these different parts of myself, or find like, oh, actually that was really uncomfortable for me. There was something there that almost triggered something in me that, I learned from that
Mm-hmm.
experience. Or maybe I'm in this dance and I'm noticing my thoughts now of, oh, what's people thinking of me? And part of me is like, I thought I'd worked through that, but it showed up
Yeah.
in a different way. Cool. Now I get to continue to evolve through these different experiences and putting myself into new opportunities, if that makes sense.
Mm.
It's a long
Absolutely.
answer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I love it. There's so many gems in there. And I think it's funny how a lot of the time when I speak to people who have gone through some sort of, I don't know, some people will call it a spiritual awakening or a existential crisis, a midlife crisis, like whatever you want to call it, some type of personal change and transformation. There always seems to be like eat, pray, love moments where they're like, I just had to throw it to the wind and I had to dive in and I really had to kind of date myself again and
Mm.
figure myself out. And I had such a similar experience when I went from like corporate marketing and oil and gas that was sucking my soul and trying to like navigate my way out of that and get out of a relationship that I thought was my forever relationship. And there was so much change. And I had a very similar moment where I was literally like booking my flight to India to do a 200-hour yoga teacher training as I'm breaking up with my partner. And I was like, I've got to go. I've got to do this. I need to get out. And that was kind of that spark for me, and that shift and change where I was like, no, I need to kind of spread my wings and actually figure out what I need. Like, who am I without that relationship, without that job, without this? Do I like ecstatic dance? Do I like cacao ceremonies? What even is Reiki? And like you just kind of
Yeah.
dive in, and it's
Yeah.
so beautiful. It's like it's those eat, pray, love moments where you're like, okay, who am I? And I really love that you mention the moments of exploring your edges and stepping out of comfort and challenging yourself in ways that could potentially activate or trigger you. But it sounds like you're very much in a space of not only awareness now to be able to see that and notice it, but also it's kind of like a newfound sense of patience and compassion with yourself where you can say, okay, I thought I had moved through this, but without guilting and shaming myself, I'm simply going to hold space for it, allow it, notice it, and then see what comes of it. How do you think you got to that space? Because for some people, I know that those moments can be full of guilt because they're like, oh, I've worked so hard and I'm still letting that thing get to me. Or I thought I was more mature than this by now. And they can be a little bit more hard on themselves. So what does it look like for you to actually be in that space of noticing and just allowing it to be and not maybe feeling guilty?
Mm. In full transparency, like, I can still be really hard on myself. And
Oh, you're
that's like,
human.
yeah, that's one of the things, right? Like I came from that sporting background that was like basically disconnect from your pain, like
Mm,
disconnect from your body and push yourself as hard as you can until you throw up,
mm-hmm,
and then you're celebrated. And if you're not, like, well, for me, what I, internalized was if I'm not working that hard, then I'm not good enough and I'm doing something wrong, all these things. And
mm-hmm.
the guilt around just allowing myself to have a friggin' sleep in. So
Yeah.
it's now changed. And self compassion has and continues to be the biggest practice that allows me to
Mm,
shift out of those experiences. And it's not that I never have judgment or I never have guilt or I never, um, have these
mhm.
destructive thoughts. It's like now even I notice those and I can and almost like have a little laugh at myself, like have a little like moment of, oh, this familiar, this old
Yeah.
familiar friend. And with the tools that I have, gratefully now, like bring back self-compassion, which,
Mhm.
has got to start with accepting and acknowledging what is right now, whether that is an experience of guilt or whether it is noticing an old pattern or a trigger. And like Brene Brown talks about, is like not shame spiraling, not going,
Mhm.
I've noticed this trigger, now I'm going to shame myself for having that trigger. Now I've noticed that I'm feeling shame for the trigger and I'm going to feel shame for having the shame. It's just
Right.
like, no. But, that can happen too. But it's again being like, as soon as I can, really noticing that that's there, and bringing compassion to myself and kindness, and like, okay, this is what I'm experiencing right now, and these are the feelings that are arising within me from this. How can I, as best as I can, just love myself and love this in this moment, and know
Mm.
that on a like intellectual, I suppose, level, know that this is teaching me something. This is here for my highest good. I'll never receive any experience or any feeling that I'm not ready for and that I can't handle. And
Yes.
that
Yeah.
everything is for me, rather than resistance would say, like, why is this, or, why is this happening? This shouldn't be happening. There's something wrong with this. There's something wrong with me,
Mhm.
versus, gosh, this is happening and it feels really hard, but I know that this is for me. And there's, even if I can't find it in this moment, there is a lesson or a beauty that's going to come from this.
Mm. I love that. This is happening for me. And I love that you bring in that we're only going to be met with things that we can handle, even how hard they seem and how not manageable they seem and overwhelming they might seem. We are really only given what we can bear. So I think that's a
Mm.
really powerful, powerful reminder. And it kind of takes a little bit of the pressure off, and we can say, okay, I might not feel like I can handle it right now, but maybe I just need to sleep on it. And maybe tomorrow will be 1% more better and easier,
Mm.
and whatever that looks like. So I love, love, love that. So I'm really curious to get into the work that you do, because I could just ask about who you are and all of this for days. I'm so intrigued. There's so much goodness. But I really want to explore this idea of shifting the mindset away from weight loss and towards this more balanced and maybe compassionate look at body image and self respect and self love. And what does it actually mean for you to shift a mindset around weight loss? Because it's, I would say, as a nutritionist and as a nutritionist that focuses on trauma informed approaches to nutrition and getting into the root of what caused maybe a imbalanced relationship with food or a more negative relationship with food, it's such a complex thing. It's the relationship we have with food and the relationship we have with our bodies there's so much complexity and difference from person to person and weight to it. Like, no pun intended, but there's a gravity to it. And I'm really curious to know what it means for you to work with people in that arena now. So, when you're working with a client or you're in that space of talking about weight loss and body image and relationship with food, what's the biggest shift that you've noticed in yourself that you can then share with your clients or share with the people that you work alongside?
Mm. Well, just like it is complex, as you say. So I've got a couple of things that I can share on this and how I work with
Mm-hmm.
people, because like you said, it's so individual, and the root, like, one of my biggest passions is not just saying like, here, eat all the things or just give yourself freedom. Like, there is this portion of intuitive eating, which I'll talk about in a moment, but there's also, like, on a mindset and subconscious belief level, that
Mm-hmm.
deeper root cause of like, why is someone feeling the need to shrink their bodies to this extreme or
Mm-hmm.
control food to this extreme, and really getting down to the beliefs that they have about themselves and about what will be possible, what they, believe will be possible for them at the size that they're not allowing or believing is possible for them now. And
Mm-hmm.
really peeling, like I talked about, a lot of this just is, similar to what I shared in my story of peeling back those layers of where those beliefs came from, and when was the first time that they decided that their body was wrong, like,
Yeah.
who kind of, maybe it was a message that they received quite directly about themselves, or maybe it was something that they internalized from the way that they saw other people interacting with their bodies or the messages of the media and things like that. So I go into that into quite a big way
Mm-hmm.
to help do some subconscious belief reprogramming, for the technical term.
Yeah.
But on more of a, I guess, physical level, intuitive eating is the process of re reconnecting with your own internal guidance when it comes to food, knowing that you have the agency, right, the choice, the free
Mm-hmm.
will to choose whatever it is that you like, without guilt, without shame, without rules. And so there's this breaking up with, the initial part of that work is breaking up with diet culture, which is the messages
Right.
around, like our bodies, the way they should look, but also the good and bad and black and white thinking when it comes to food. So food mentality and diet
Mm-hmm.
mentality is a big part of that, of like, I have clients that will say, oh, I was hungry, but I didn't eat because I'd only eaten 2 hours before. That would be
Mm-hmm.
a sign of a diet mentality rule for me that we could begin to work on, to say, like, let's honor your hunger. And honoring your hunger means whenever, like, whenever
Yeah.
you're hungry, regardless of what you had 2 hours ago, or if you just ate 30 minutes ago and actually that wasn't enough and you're still hungry, that
Mm-hmm.
portion size that diet culture might have told you was enough for your body is actually not enough for your body, because your body's still telling you it's hungry. So
Yeah.
lots of little things like that around making peace with food, and really becoming in tune with your body, what feels good for you. And in order to find what feels good, I really do think there has to be a period of time of giving yourself full permission to just explore all foods. And,
Mm-hmm.
if that means that for someone who's highly restricted foods in the past, they only eat pasta for a week and pizza and whatever, like, that's okay. And that
Mm-hmm.
and that will allow this trust to be built between the body and the mind again, that food is safe and that food is not going to go anywhere. And that allows for that intuition to come back of like, oh, I do actually think I've had enough of the pasta now. And as nice as it was, my body's actually telling me that it really would like something else, be it,
Mhm.
a salad or, meat and veggies or burger
Yeah.
or whatever. But, then there's like, oh, and the pasta's still available when I choose that as well. And I just use
Mm.
that as a example that maybe a client's had. But yeah, so that intuitive eating piece, the mindset, and then we get into the body image work, because inevitably what comes up in this process, like I shared in my story as well, is like the fear of like, that if I eat this way, is my body going to change, and what is that going to mean about me?
Mhm.
And so then there's the deeper bit of work around, yeah, what is it going to mean about you? And most people will come to some place of, it's going to mean that I'm a failure. It's going to mean that I'm not going to be loved. It's going to mean that, like all of these
Mhm.
really conditioned, deep, ingrained beliefs that come through diet culture, and this stigma that is within the society of um, being in a larger body, and whatever that means for you, for someone like myself who was an athlete, being in a larger body is still being in a societally, I'm just doing air quotation marks, a societally
Mhm.
acceptable body, right? But then for
Mhm.
other people, that's like looking at weight, just moving away from this idea of anything being right and wrong, and like the way that our society constructs body image can be so, so harmful and so detrimental that, yeah, that's where this fear really comes from. And that's a huge part of the work, is overcoming the fear of weight gain, or what a lot of the work around health at every size and intuitive eating would call fat phobia, which is
Mm.
like a big, yeah, big
Yeah,
conversation.
that fear
Yeah,
piece.
yeah.
It's a big, big part of it, is because it's not even like it's thrown at us every day, every direction that we look. Size
Mm,
0, size this, size that, eat this way to look better. And like there's just so much like media and what we see in movies and what we see on Instagram and Facebook, and like it's literally everywhere. And I do think there are some companies and some organizations that are doing good work to try and change that, to try and change the messaging that we're sent. But it's insidious, it's everywhere, it's so prevalent. So, what would you say to someone who maybe knows that they don't have the healthiest relationship with their body image, who maybe doesn't love the way that they look, or is constantly thriving and striving to be something different than what they are? Do you have maybe like a top three suggestions of where to start? Like, is it affirmations? Is it, I don't even know, self talk? Like, is there a top three that you have that you would say to somebody, okay, start with these and
mm.
let's start to try and heal this relationship that you have with either your body or your body image?
Yeah, cool. I'm gonna come back to this letting go piece, because I
Mm,
think as a framework, and what I use in my coaching business as well, is that in order to transform and to open up to something new, we really do need to let go of the old. I'm going to start in the physical rather than letting go of belief. That's
mhm,
a part of it, but really looking like what you just mentioned, we are bombarded with these messages, but we actually do have more control than we often allow
mhm.
ourselves around that. So,
Yeah.
if you are struggling with the way that you're feeling about your body, I would ask what it is that you're absorbing that's continuing to exacerbate that for you. So,
Yes.
are you constantly looking at fitness models or dieting magazines, or
Yeah.
following people on Instagram that promote highly restrictive diets or only one size body image or something like that? And
Mm,
starting to take responsibility for your external environment, because our external environment has such a huge effect on our internal environment and mindset.
Yeah.
So there's, and when you say that, I'm like, I know that it's true. I know that it's everywhere. I know that these messages are everywhere. But honestly, in my life, I feel like, wow, Health at Every Size is winning. Like everyone's doing body positive stuff. This is great. But that's
Yeah.
because that is literally what I surround myself with.
Yeah.
And so
Exactly.
calling like surround sound your life, like I bring that into my Instagram feed, into what I read, into what I listen to. And for anyone listening, I have, I think you'll pop a link to my Instagram. In my Instagram bio link tree, there is a resource list for anyone who wants to explore some of these things a little bit further. So I would begin by starting to
Oh, I
clear
love
out clear out your environment of, be that your social media. Who are you following? Who is causing you to feel like your body's not good enough, like you need to diet, like you need to lose weight, like you need to punish yourself? Start to take responsibility for that, and you can, mute, remove, do whatever you need to do. Look at the books that you're reading. If you're constantly looking at images that are in that same realm, whether it's magazines or whatever, you can start to clear out those. And then jump over to my Instagram, find that resource list, and you can, there's a whole lot of Instagram accounts on there. There's a whole lot of
it.
blogs and other
Amazing.
podcasts and things as well, things that I've listened to that really supported me, that you can start to begin to absorb, that will give you even more tools and resources. And then, and then this really powerful exercise of body gratitude. So once you've started to like clear some of the clutter, so to speak, around that, you can, what we're conditioned into, right, is our external appearance being our number one, that's the most important thing about us. And we so often see our body and see what we look like versus what our body allows us to do. And
Yes.
when we, even if we don't, because this is a hard one for a lot of people, right? They're like, I don't like my body at all, and you're telling me that I'm going to start loving it. Like, that sounds crazy. I
Yeah.
can't even imagine that. Or they might even be like, there's no way I can't even accept my body the way it is now.
Yeah.
And these are all stepping stones. So you wouldn't tell someone to go from, like you're going to go from hating your body to loving your body in the next 4 weeks, like diet culture would tell you, or whatever, right?
Yeah.
Like that sort of message. But instead, you can begin to practice being grateful for the things that your body allows you to do on a daily basis. And even if you don't like the physical appearance of your body right now, that's totally okay. So much compassion for yourself. And what is that part of your body allowing you to do? What experience of life is that part of your body giving you? It might be as simple as, instead of looking at your arms and being like, what you might normally go to, just for example, might be like, oh, my arms aren't as toned as I would like them to be, or there's this bit of saggy skin hanging down here that shouldn't be there, or whatever, right?
Yeah.
You go and you bring awareness to that. Okay, I notice that that's showing up for me. Again, we're not trying to deny, judge, bring shame to that. It's just like, that is there. And wow, thank you, arms. Today you allowed me to hug these people that I loved. You allowed me to pick up my children. You allowed me to carry my groceries. Maybe you do physical work for a job, so your arms really like help you lift things, or whatever it is, right? You can find something for every single part of your body. And, for women, the stomach is always one that comes up in my clients, and in myself, it was like, oh, God, this is happening. And so it's like, like I acknowledge that this is something that society has conditioned me into believing, and that's okay. That's something that I've been conditioned into. It's not my truth. And while I'm on this healing journey, I can be so grateful that my stomach allows me to digest food, that this area of my body maybe has given birth or has the potential to give birth, that it's the place that I find my deepest internal wisdom. Like it gives me
Mm,
some
yeah.
guidance. That it's just such a place of infinite power and possibility and creation and birth. And I think like when we look at our parts of our body with this wonder and this sense of, wow, it's actually really incredible that like just my heart is beating every second of
Mm,
every day, and I've not given it a second thought. I've never even been grateful for my heart. Like, and if you can go to sleep with that every single night and wake up with that every single morning, you'd actually be surprised how your perception of your body starts to shift without even focusing on the physical at that moment.
mm. Oh my God. Everything about that. I'm just doing this like little happy dance over here. And as you were saying those words, it was like I kind of like had my hands on my body and I was like, yeah, actually, like, when's the last time we had a conversation? When's the last
Mm,
time that I told you how amazing you are rather than all the things that I wish you could do or that I wish you were?
mm.
That was just, yes, so much yes in that. And thank you so much for sharing that insight and that moment of pause to actually have gratitude for these these incredible bodies that move us through life and do all these incredible things. And if that's the one place we start, we're in a pretty good shape. That's really, really wonderful. I have one last question that I want to ask you. I actually have a million questions that I want to ask you. I could talk to you for the next 7 hours, but I want to respect your time. So I have one last question, and it's my favorite one because you can literally take this however you want. It doesn't have to be in regards to your profession or what's happening in the world today. Like, you can take this in any way that you want. And I just love where people take it. So, when you think of the world as a whole right now and everything that's occurring, has occurred, and will occur, if there was one big norm that you could disrupt or one big change that you could make, what would it be and why?
It's so funny how you like think. I thought I knew how I was going to answer this, like, 'cause of what I do, obviously, like around bodies, and it would be about reclaiming our worth from our bodies, and that is important. And as like a big, big picture, it would be that in everything that we do and in our interactions, we could come from love. And
Mm,
if the mindset on a collective level that we shifted was from fear to love, then actually that would change all of this that we've been talking about anyway. So it's
yeah.
like I said earlier, you know, where everything is happening for us. And if we come from that lens, everything is happening for us, how can we love ourselves, love our experience, know that? So this is going to go really deep and far, but it's like if we knew who we were, like if we really knew who we were, not our bodies, not our labels, not our identities.
Mm,
If we knew our power, if we knew our magnificence and the love that we have available and within us, and that we actually are in every moment and every interaction, and we made our choices and we had our life experiences and our interactions and our relationships and even our struggles and our conflicts from that place,
mm,
how different the world would be. And that might sound a little bit airy fairy, like, but it its essence, I think what it is it's we are to for people to come back to themselves, meaning come back to the truth of who you are at your core, which really is love, which really is limitlessness, possibility, expansiveness, joy, rather than the conditioning with which we have put on us from the structures of society, which is so based upon fear and not enoughness and the need to change something about ourselves. Um,
Mm.
yeah, I'll leave
Oh
it there.
my, yes. I just love everything about that because you're right. If we could make that shift from fear-based reactions or emotional reactions and could shift back into that space of unconditional love and coming from a space of our truest essence and our highest good and acting from that place. Can you imagine how magical the world would be? Oh my God, that's a world that I want to live in.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I do try and imagine that as much as possible, at least
Ah.
in my own world. And I think that's something that we could all do with practicing more, is imagining and
Mm.
feeling feeling that, like not just imagining it, but like feeling what that would feel like in our own bodies and in our
Mm.
own experience. And like the saying goes, be the change that we want to see in the world. So bringing
Yeah,
that first into our own experience.
I love that. The power of the thoughts. So, so good. Oh my gosh, Sarah, thank you so much. I am so beyond grateful for this conversation. There was so much vulnerability and honesty and such little nuggets of wisdom dropped throughout. I'm going to have to re listen to this for my own benefit a million times and soak that up all over again. And for those of you who are as obsessed with Sarah as I am now, you can find all of the links to her Instagram, her Facebook, her website. That'll all be in the episode description. I just think everyone needs a little bit more of you in their life. And whether that's coaching, whether that's following you on social media, all of the above, I am here for it and so, so excited to see what you do. So thank you so much for your time, Sarah.
Thank you so much, and thank you for those beautiful words. I'm beaming, and yeah, thank you to all of you beautiful souls who have listened. I'm so excited to continue this conversation.
Mm-hmm. Thank you so much for listening. And if there's anything at all that you want to explore or you have ideas about and want to get into, please drop me a line. You can find us at the Self Agency Advocate on both Facebook and Instagram. And I would absolutely love to chat. So let's connect.